Hello there. It looks like we've been subjected to a bit of Russian Maskirovka, a work of deception. What started out as a massive spark yesterday ended up as a very damp squib indeed, with no one able to really tell who won, who lost, or what was gained. And that outcome could be a bit of a win for the Kremlin. Now, what has the outcome been? Well, according to what we're told, the Wagner Group mercenaries have been ordered back to their camps in Ukraine, with some of them being absorbed into the Russian army. The Wagner Group leader, Prigozhin, has been exiled to Belarus, supposedly after President Lukashenko of Belarus brokered a deal between Putin and Prigozhin. And neither Prigozhin nor his mercenaries will be prosecuted for their actions. So all within a day we had a situation of Prigozhin saying he will destroy all in his path on the road to Moscow, and Putin on TV saying any insurrection will be crushed, as barricades went up around the capital with reports of attack helicopters machine gunning the Wagner Group, who supposedly shot down between 1 and 3 of them and overall killing 13 people. And that suddenly morphed into smiles all round as a deal was arrived at. Very strange. Looking back, it appears to be more theatre than coup. A bit of the Russian military doctrine of Maskirovka, military deception. Now, according to reports, if you believe them, the Pentagon had been monitoring the build-up of the Wagner Group at the Russian border for some time. If that is the case, then the Russians will certainly have noticed. Therefore, Putin would have known as well. Now, President Lukashenko has, so far, kept Belarus out of the Ukraine war. And there are reports that his army isn't up to much anyway. Once again, if you believe Western reports, that is. But Putin has stationed a number of nuclear weapons inside Belarus, presumably under the full control of Moscow. So we now have the leader of Russia's most effective battlefield unit, the Wagner Group, Prigozhin, in Belarus, as well as nukes. Now, had Prigozhin just turned up out of the blue in Belarus, it would have raised many an eyebrow, while probably raising a lot of concerning questions too. But now, maybe it's different. Now maybe no one will be asking those concerning questions. So has Putin now managed to reset the chessboard in his own favour, using a 20-year friendship between Lukashenko and Prigozhin as cover? And it is very unclear how many of his Wagner Group team Prigozhin will be taking with him. Is the aim to mobilise a new Wagner team in Belarus, or maybe even turn the Belarusian army into a Wagner army? Are we going to see a build-up of exercises along the Belarus-Ukraine border? A build-up for another attack on the Ukrainian capital, maybe? Instead of having a quiet period of exile in Belarus, will Prigozhin be extremely busy training a new army under his own command? But this time he might by then also have acquired a nuke or two along the way. Is this how Putin gains plausible deniability for the use of a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine? He could then blame a rogue Prigozhin for the action, or go on air publicly denouncing the actions of Prigozhin in Ukraine while covertly backing them. High stakes indeed if that's so. Could Putin even have an eye for taking the Suwalki corridor along the Polish-Lithuania border to join Belarus to Kaliningrad? Kaliningrad being a separate part of Russia on the Baltic coast. And that would mean facing down NATO. Very, very high stakes indeed. The other possible outcome is that Prigozhin ends up disappearing, or is found to have followed the many out of the window, if you get my drift. But the Wagner Group mercenaries appear to have been treated like heroes as they left Rostov, something that might stay Putin's hand if, and it is a big if, he is after retribution. But Putin must have had the opportunity to deal with the Wagner Group force while it was on the road to Moscow. He has the air power to sort that out pretty sharpish. And with his words on TV to the whole country saying he would put it down, why did he end up negotiating? So why was that convoy, which we now hear was quite small, why was it allowed to speed north hundreds of miles? And we end up seeing images of Prigozhin smiling warmly after he about turned his column, having just been threatened by Putin, someone who does not like such challenges and would be likely to seek reprisals. And the Wagner boss seems to have no worries at all. All I can come up with from this scenario, as put forth in the press and social media, is that Putin wanted the Wagner leader in Minsk for some reason. And to achieve that, he's had to remove his most effective leader on the ground in Ukraine. And if that's right, it would therefore have to be for a very, very good reason. But what of the Wagner Group's operations in places like Africa and Venezuela? I think this story has a way to go yet. Well, the new SNP leader, Humza Yousaf, had a bit of a battering yesterday, says the Mail. He held a flagship independence bash in Caird Hall yesterday, but could only fill 3/4 of the 2,000 seats. And the party had been forced to appeal for more people to buy tickets, but to no avail. Not only that, Yousaf, who is polling at just 17% on the approval scale, was forced to abandon his speech when one woman heckled him about not calling a public inquiry into the rogue surgeon Sam El-Jamal. And she said she would be cancelling her membership as a result. Now, the latest polling on the subject of independence also shows support for independence has dropped to 43%. But still, Yousaf marches on with the idea that the next general election in Scotland will be a de facto referendum, and if the SNP gets most of the seats, then Yousaf says he'll be demanding break-up talks with the UK commence. If we win that general election, we will then negotiate with the UK government on how we give it democratic effect, he said. If it is a referendum or simply the general election, that is, of course, for the UK government to determine, because they have told us time and time again this is a voluntary union. If so, then prove it. In response, the Tory Constitution spokesman Donald Cameron said that all Yousaf did was throw some red meat for the nationalists to gnaw upon while trying to deflect from the chaos engulfing his party. But no mention of finances or where a certain 600 grand disappeared to, though, I see. And I still don't see why Nicola Sturgeon chose Humza Useless in the first place, unless, as I've said before, she is planning to retake the throne in the very near future.